Okay.
All right. Got it. All right. Thanks, Teresa. So if you haven't logged into the meeting chat yet, let us know where you're coming in from. I want to thank you. My name is Linda Kruger, and I'm here with AARP. I'm a volunteer in Juneau. And on behalf of AARP Alaska, I'd like to welcome you to the first in our 6-part series on brain health. Today, our guest speaker is Amy Urbanis, and Amy's the dietitian for UAA and the Anchorage Senior Activity Center. We're really thrilled to have Amy with us, and we're so excited that you have joined us today. And if you're watching this as a recording in the future, we've got people live streaming on Facebook. So wherever you're joining us, whenever you're joining us, welcome, and we're glad you could be with us. We're going to start with some Zoom meeting tips for people who might not be very experienced with Zoom. You have a unmute button at the bottom of your screen, and your microphone should be on mute so that we're not hearing all that background noise. And you can tell that it's on mute if there's a red line through the microphone. If there isn't, just click the microphone to mute it, and then unclick it when you want to talk. You just click on that microphone if you want to talk. But keeping yourself on mute prevents a lot of background noise distraction. There's a video. You'll see the little video picture on that same bar. We encourage you to turn on your camera if you're able to do that. It works like a mute button, and that way this is more of an interactive meeting and we can see your face. It would be helpful for you to rename yourself if you're not logged in with a name, if you're just a telephone number or a number of some sort. You can do that by clicking on the 3 dots to the right of your name in the participant list. So if you want to do that, that would be great. The chat button is the next button on the line. We'll be asking people to respond in chat. And to use the chat, you click on the icon, a box will open up, and you type your message in the bottom and press enter when you're done. And so if you haven't already, you typed in your community that you're joining from, you can do that in the chat box. The reactions button, if you click on that icon, you see that you can raise your hand, and that brings up the point that we're going to hold questions until the end. So if you have a question, write it down, and or you can put it in the chat box, and then we'll go back and go through those at the end. And on one other technical detail, we're recording this program, and we'll send out the recording and all of the links to you after the program's over. So someone said, how do you view the recording? A link will be sent to you with the recording, and you'll be able to click on the link and go to the recording and watch it at your leisure after the session's finished. That's it for Zoom meeting tips. We have a disclaimer. AARP has asked me to share the disclaimer that this session is intended to be informational and educational and does not constitute medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. You should always seek the advice of a physician or another qualified healthcare provider regarding your personal health, and before beginning or changing any treatment, activity, program, or dietary plan. AARP is not responsible for any decisions or actions taken in reliance upon or as a result of the information provided during this event. We are not medical experts and cannot provide specific advice or recommendations, but the information we cover today is intended to help people make informed decisions on how to lead a lifestyle that supports brain health. So a little bit about AARP Alaska. If you're not familiar with AARP, the AARP Alaska has a vision of a society in which all people live with dignity and purpose and fulfill their goals and dreams. The mission of AARP is to empower people to choose how they live as they age. AARP is a nonprofit, nonpartisan membership organization for people over 50 with 38 million members nationally and 77,000 members in Alaska. AAR's purpose, as I mentioned, is to empower people to choose how they live as they age, saving for retirement, staying healthy and fit, including brain health that we're talking about in the next 6 weeks, building strong relationships, and having meaningful activity. AARP Alaska is working on aging issues for Alaskans 50 and over, and we do this in 4 different ways. Advocacy, working on national issues like Social Security, Medicare, and prescription drugs. And at the state level, we're advocating for telehealth, a sustainable state budget, a senior grant program, and healthcare. In education, we're working on brain health. Obviously, this 6-part series on brain health, technology use, veterans services, gardening, fraud prevention, caregiving resources, and financial planning. In the area of member engagement, we're hosting social groups, movie nights, guest lectures, exercise groups, and many more events, both locally and on Zoom. Community action, we have community teams in Juneau, Ketchikan, Anchorage, and Mat-Su, who are all working to make their communities more age-friendly. So let's set this off with some good news. Until recently, the prevailing scientific wisdom held that the human brain was pretty much fixed in early life. Experts believe that at birth, our brains had all the cells we were ever going to have. Now, I'm not a neuroscientist or a medical doctor, so I'm not going to go into the structure of the brain or how it operates, but I can share with you today, based on research, the good news is that regardless of age, our brain is constantly changing and growing and can grow new cells. The best part is that we can do a lot to change our brain health and improve our quality of life. Experts say that only about 30% of physical aging can be traced to our genes. All the rest is up to us. So based on current brain research vetted for you by AARP's Global Council on Brain Health and our work for AARP's online Staying Sharp program, we've identified 6 pillars of a lifestyle that supports brain health. Eat right, ongoing exercise, engage your brain, be social, manage stress, and restorative sleep. So those 6 areas are the areas we'll be covering in this 6-week series. The first pillar we're going to talk about is how to eat right. What you eat can have a big impact on your brain. Although no specific diet has been proven to maintain or improve brain health, studies have found that eating certain plants does help with cognition. And I'm sure we're going to hear more about that from our guest speaker, Amy Urbanis. As I mentioned, Amy's a dietitian at UAA and the Anchorage Senior Activity Center, and she's going to share information on how eating right can affect our brain health. Amy has been a registered dietitian, nutritionist, and certified diabetes educator in the Anchorage area for over 20 years. Her focus is on chronic disease management with an emphasis in diabetes care. And with 20 years, she has lots of experience to share with us. Amy is currently an assistant professor with dietetics and nutrition and the director of the Bachelor of Science in Dietetics at the University of Alaska, Anchorage. She's also enjoying teaching nutrition classes at the Anchorage Senior Center and providing one-on-one nutrition consultation with seniors. Some of you folks who are on from Anchorage are probably already well familiar with Amy. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Amy. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing with us, Amy.
Thank you very much, Linda. So that was a very nice welcome, and thank you everyone for coming and participating today, and to AARP for inviting me to participate. As Linda said, I've been a dietitian for a long time, and over the course of that 20 years, have really grown to love the adult population. This is where I think my passion and my heart really lives. And I've been working with people living with chronic disease or helping people to prevent chronic disease for a long time. And as I moved over into academia, I worked for Providence Hospital for a very long time, and I moved over to UAA. And I was so fortunate to meet Patrick, who's on the call here, who's with AARP, who reached out to me and pulled me into the Anchorage Senior Center. And I've just really enjoyed the opportunity to be able to work with the members there, really just providing talks like this, and just kind of covering general topics. Linda, I was very happy to hear your disclaimer at the beginning. I am not a neurologist. I'm a food specialist, and really my main specialty is diabetes. So if anybody wants to talk for 8 hours on diabetes, I'm happy to do it. But this definitely, brain health is super, super important because, if we don't have our brain is our everything. And to be able to live out our lives with dignity in the place of our choosing, and to be happy and healthy, we need to have a healthy brain as well. And so I put here, I did not realize how many people were going to be here. So when I have questions up here, there's not enough time to really have super interactive conversation. But my goal, as far as, my personal goal and why I really want to have a healthy brain as I age, is that I really just want to live a long and happy and healthy life with the ability to enjoy the things that I love. And so a lot of the pillars that Linda, that you just covered, really speak to the things that I love. I love to be social. I love food, activity. All of these things are the things that I want to be able to continue to age and love. And then I also, we are, as adults, we are the product of our life, and all of our experiences. I always feel like our lives are a big, long recipe of what makes us who we are. And so I want to have the ability to have the memory of all the things that have made me who I am today, and to be with my family. So the things I'm going to talk about today, as far as food goes, are nothing that you are going to hear is going to knock your socks off. And I always say that for those of you that have been, I do recognize a couple names here that have been in my nutrition classes with the Senior Center. And healthy nutrition, I always say, is not very sexy. It's not exciting. It's not a fad diet. There's nothing that you are going to hear today that is going to be like rocket science. It's stuff that you probably heard from your mother and your grandmother, or grandfather, father, but your family and the people that have lived around you, the things that we should be doing to be living a healthy and happy life. The reality, though, is what Linda was saying, is that there is new, really awesome research in the world of brain health. And so some of the things I'm going to talk about today come from some recent studies as early as 2000 or as late as 2015, but even with some additional information that came out in 2021. So we are moving towards having the ability to have a kind of like a meal pattern, so to speak, to have a healthy brain. Okay, next slide. I promise not to talk that long for each slide. Okay, so Linda had mentioned that many of the things that affect our brain have to do with the things that we actually have control over. So when we think about prevention of disease and medical conditions, or even managing them once they exist, we kind of put things into two buckets. We have modifiable lifestyle risk factors, and then we have non-modifiable risk factors. So the non-modifiable things are the things that we just can't change. And the biggest one is genetics. Unfortunately, or fortunately, whatever, we can't pick our parents, right? So we are born with the genes that we have. Some of us are predisposed to certain conditions, and that's just a reality. But there are lots of things that we can do that we have control over to improve our health. So definitely, to keep a brain healthy, to maintain our memory, prevent dementia, the things that we can really do in the modifiable risk factor category is we can eat healthy. We can be physically active, which I think you're going to have a talk on that down the road. And we definitely, maintaining a healthy weight actually affects brain health as well. And that does not mean getting back to your, the glory high school days or anything like that. But maintaining a healthy weight is different for everybody. But just having that be something that you're aware of. So as I dive into the modifiable risk factors and the things that we can do in our diet, what we are really trying to swing away from is what I would consider a Western diet. So many of you, I have here, what do we mean by a Western diet? Western diets are associated with a higher risk for dementia. And you're going to find these on my final slide. I talk about the things to try to limit. I'm not going to say don't ever eat. I'm not that kind of a dietitian. I'm not the food police. But there are things, parts of food that are a part of a Western diet that are not healthy for our brain. And these are going to be fried foods, fast foods, things that are very high in saturated fats or trans fats. These are things that are super, super tasty, but have crept into our Western diet, and we're going to need to try to maybe not eat them as often. So the things that we're going to talk about today, I'm going to talk about a lot of fruits, vegetables, grains, legumes like beans, and fish as a way that we help to reduce our risk. Next slide. Okay, I'm not going to go through all this just for a lack of time because I really want to get to the food piece. But I do want to kind of just point out when we talk about brain health and we talk about dementia and Alzheimer's and trying to prevent these things, there are some heavy risk factors that are very lifestyle oriented. So I just want to point them out that heavy drinking is a risk factor. Diabetes, or uncontrolled diabetes, I should say, not living with diabetes, but uncontrolled diabetes, cardiovascular disease, stroke, hypertension or high blood pressure, aging, which we have no control over, depression, and a family history are things that can be risk factors. Next slide. And why we're all concerned is because Alzheimer's disease is actually, in the top 10 causes of death in the United States, and unfortunately and sadly, affects many, many, many people and families. And so any little thing that we can do to maintain our brain health, I think, is a wonderful thing. Next slide. Okay, so the food. The berries, we'll talk about berries, but there are certain components of what we would call brain food that researchers have discovered and found. And the main components of these are going to be antioxidants, phytochemicals, and heart healthy fats. Now, antioxidants, you might have heard of these substances, which we talk a lot about antioxidants in the world of cancer and cancer prevention. So a lot of the things that you hear today as a part of a healthy brain cross-pollinate with healthy things to prevent cancer, healthy things to prevent or to control diabetes, healthy things to prevent or to maintain a healthy heart. They're going to be things that are going to, be just healthy overall. But antioxidants are substances that may prevent or delay some type of cell damage. So when we think of our brain and the cells there, we want to maintain the health of our brain cells. So yes, we can kind of still build some new, healthy things going on in the brain, but we definitely want to prevent the cell, or to maintain the healthy brain cells that we have. And so these antioxidants actually help well, actually, I'm going to talk about that a little bit. So natural forms from food are beneficial, supplements are not. Okay, so what this means is that with antioxidants and a lot of the food things that I'm going to talk about, what we found in research is that we get the benefit if we actually get it from the food that we eat. So please don't take me talking about antioxidants and phytochemicals and go run out to Freddy's or to Cars and go down the long aisle of supplements and start pulling these things off the shelf. They don't work in pill form. These need to come in your food, okay? And that stuff we are still studying and learning more about. So to protect against brain cell damage and improve cognitive functioning, the antioxidants, these are just some examples we can find in the skins of our red apples, onions, blueberries, cranberries, strawberries. Notice berries is a common thread, are places where we can get a lot of antioxidants. Now, phytochemicals are also, these are natural compounds found in foods that may support brain plasticity and may have neuroprotective effects. So phytochemicals are come from like the pigments in our fruits and vegetables. And really, when I think of phytochemicals, they work in conjunction with antioxidants. And so we kind of have this human antioxidant system. Now, I am not a specialist in that area. I'm not a biochemist or a specialist in metabolism. Sorry. But they tend to work together. And so we're trying to, in research, we're figuring out more and more and more about how these things are working together. And then the other thing that we'll talk about is heart healthy fats. So, we hear about obviously heart healthy fats in the world of cardiovascular disease. But what heart healthy fats do with brain health is they help to reduce inflammation. And inflammation, you might hear a lot about inflammation just on the internet. You might hear your doctor throw that word around. Here, take these omega-3 fatty acids because we want to control inflammation. But inflammation is just our body's natural response to injury and infection. Okay, so when we have chronic disease, so let's say you have diabetes or cardiovascular disease or something like that, we even find it with people being overweight for a long time, that our body is just in this constant state of having inflammation, this constant state of trying to repair and to heal and all the rest of it. And so so we found that inflammation is not a wonderful thing. And so it's due to chronic disease. And so by heart healthy fats help to reduce inflammation. So that has been found to be helpful for our brain. Okay, next slide. Okay, so the rest of this talk is really going to be focused on what we call the MIND diet. And so this is where a lot of the research in nutrition and brain health is really being focused. And the MIND diet stands for the Mediterranean DASH diet intervention for neurodegenerative delay. It's much easier to say MIND than that. But many of you have probably heard of the Mediterranean diet. Many of you may have heard of the DASH diet, which is dietary approaches to stopping hypertension. Both have been studied heavily, and we know that they're super, super effective. A Mediterranean diet speaks to eating the types of foods that you would find people living in the Mediterranean eat. Lots of olive oil and olives and fish and seafood, tomatoes, certain types of fruits and vegetables that have a lot of these antioxidants and phytochemicals. The DASH diet has also been very, very heavily studied and is very effective in reducing hypertension, among other things. And it really kind of focuses on this lots of whole grains, but it also throws in the impact and effect that nuts and seeds have on our health, which is good. It also looks at, the fats and the things like that we eat. So neither one of those individually seem to show great impact on brain health, but the combination of the two styles of eating have been shown to actually be pretty helpful in brain health. So the research now is really looking at this, what we call a MIND diet, which is combining the two. And the original research, which I think the original paper was written in 2015, followed a group of older adults who ate these types of foods for 10 years. And identified foods and nutrients related to protection against dementia and cognitive decline. And they found that, like I said, the combination of these had a greater effect than the Mediterranean or DASH diet alone. So that's always really good news. Okay, next slide. So brain healthy foods, the foods that are part of the MIND diet. I apologize. I noticed this the other day. My picture's too big, so it covers up words. But anyway, foods that contain certain vitamins definitely all seem to have a protective effect when it comes to our brain. So the specific vitamins are at play here that they've identified are vitamin C, E, but really the B vitamins, I would say, is probably one of the big ones. Foods that contain carotenoids or flavonoids, these are our antioxidants and phytochemicals, which come from the pigments in our fruits and vegetables. And then foods rich in monounsaturated fatty acids and polyunsaturated fatty acids, which really we're going to talk about fish when it comes to those things, and healthy oils. Next slide. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of walk through the components of the MIND diet. Because it's great to listen to me chat about research and all the rest of it. But the reality is you need to walk away from here thinking, okay, what is it that I can actually do myself? How do I apply this to my life? How can I fix a lunch today that's in the spirit of eating in the MIND diet way? So there are certain components of the MIND diet. Now, whole grains is one component. I told you, see, you've probably heard to eat whole grains forever. But whole grains have a rich source of vitamin B. So if you look at my little picture here, I hope you can see it. But whole grains are left, it's when the grain is left intact. And there is this little thing called the germ on the inside of a whole grain. And it's a nutrient-packed core that has lots of vitamin B, vitamin E, phytochemicals, and it also has a little bit of fat. That's why whole grains can go bad if you have them for a long time. They can go rancid because whole grains actually still have a tiny bit of fat. But it's so healthy. And then the outer layer of the grain also has B vitamins and minerals. Now, when you take those whole grains and you throw them into we process them and make them really refined and processed, well, then you strip away the bran, you strip away the germ, and what you're left with is the starchy carbohydrate that we Americans tend to love. But it's the whole grain piece that really has those nutrients that can help be very healthy for your brain. So 3+ servings a day is the recommendation. So if you look down this list, it just gives you an idea of what a serving really is. So serving sizes, even though 3 servings of whole grains might sound like a lot, a serving size is not very big. So a half a cup of cooked 100% whole grain pasta is 1 serving. So if you have a cup of whole grain pasta with your dinner, that's 2 of your 3 right there. You might have a piece of toast with breakfast, so just making sure that you're choosing 100% whole grain toast, and then experiment, or the hot cereal. People love steel cut oats, are amazing. So having, even just a half a cup of steel cut oats with some blueberries or something would be a wonderful way to start off your day with some B vitamins. The whole grains actually give you a little protein too, which is great. And then those wonderful, it's a great place for fruits and things like that to live. So go explore. That's that would be my recommendation. Okay, so the next thing would be looking at vegetables. So we love veggies. I can never, ever, ever do a talk without talking about fruits and vegetables. It doesn't matter what we're talking about, eat your fruits and vegetables. This is what I was saying about how, I grew up hearing that mantra from my parents. But fruits and vegetables are where our antioxidants and our vitamins live, as well as fibers and other things that are super healthy for us. As far as the MIND diet goes, though, we really divide these vegetables into leafy greens, or we divide them into the non-leafy green, so like a carrot, for example. The leafy greens definitely have a lot of the antioxidants and the vitamins. So these, fortunately, in Alaska, I think you're going to talk about, or maybe one of the things you said, you focus on gardening. I can actually grow kale. I am a terrible gardener, but I can grow kale. Everybody can grow kale. You can grow it in a pot on your deck in the summer, and it's amazing. You can barely you don't have to love gardening and it still just does its thing. Kale is an excellent source of a leafy green. Spinach, think collard greens, things like that. And you can take a handful of spinach and throw it in your eggs. You can take a handful of spinach and throw it in your soup. And then that's an easy way to get those leafy greens. So, and then in addition to the 6 servings of leafy greens a week, we like to make sure that you're also getting an additional serving of vegetables a day. And it doesn't have to be a ton of vegetables. So a cup of spinach is actually not that much, especially once it's cooked. It kind of cooks down to a tiny bit. Okay, next slide. Okay, so nuts. Nuts are fantastic. Nuts are something that kind of finds its way into the MIND diet via the DASH diet. But nuts and seeds are a super, super healthy food. And this is where, from our nuts, we really get a combination of things. We get healthy oils. So nuts are loaded with monounsaturated fats and polyunsaturated fats, which are great. We get some vitamin E. We get zinc. Nuts have protein if you're trying to figure out a way to get a little bit more protein. They also have some magnesium in them, which is really helpful for blood pressure. 5+ servings of nuts a week is the recommendation for the MIND diet. Now, I'll tell you, that's not very much because a 1/4 cup of nuts is considered 1 serving. So, and I think it's like 12 almonds or something like that. So I don't want you all to go to Costco and get some gigantic can of nuts and set it on the counter. You'll end up eating 1,000 calories worth of nuts and you'll start putting on weight and you'll be upset with me. I'm not talking about eating nuts all day long, but just having like a little bit. Walnuts are an excellent source. So put a little bit of walnuts on a salad, a little bit of walnuts or some other type of nut in your oatmeal, something like that. You can get them, you can, sprinkle them into a whole grain muffin that you make or that you purchase. They can be found in cold cereals. So there's lots of little ways to get small amounts of nuts. If you're concerned about the salt, because you watch the salt that you eat, you can buy unsalted nuts, or so like myself, I don't care for unsalted nuts. So I buy them in bulk, and I buy salty ones and I buy unsalted ones, and I mix them together, shake them up. And that way you can kind of reduce the amount of salt that you are getting. So anyway, so nuts are great. Seeds are the same. So sunflower seeds, those kinds of things are also really good. Now, some of us have a harder time chewing nuts. So if you have any kind of issue with dentition, please know that the 100%, like the all natural nut butters, are just as good. So almond butter, cashew butter, peanut butter. Just be careful not to purchase the ones like Jif and Skippy because they are just loaded with sugar. But the all natural ones are also a good source. Okay, next slide. Beans. I hope you all love beans. I love beans, and they're so good for you. And so for the MIND diet, we encourage 4+ meals per week that include beans. Okay, so there's not a serving size listed here for beans. And the reason for that is because what the addition of beans in the diet does for people is it sort of replaces certain types of high-fat meats that people might be eating. So the bean itself, which has lots of fiber and other nutrients, isn't really, the bean itself is not so great for the brain, or that's not the point of it. The point of it is that if I'm eating more plant-based and I'm incorporating beans as in one of my meals as the kind of primary protein and kind of the filler, then I might be eating less meats and proteins that have that saturated fat. So we're reducing saturated fat, we're increasing fiber, and we're supporting our efforts in trying to eat more plant-based meals. Okay, and they're delicious. You have to get yourself a little, don't be afraid of the pressure cooker. I am addicted to my Instant Pot because it's an easy pressure cooker, and you can put dried beans straight away in there and cook them up so easily. Or canned beans are great. So don't be afraid of beans. All right, next slide, sorry. Okay, berries. So berries are fantastic. This is really, the berries of all of the fruits are really where we're getting the antioxidants. They are just so incredibly healthy for your brain. And look, we only need 2+ servings a week of berries to get the antioxidants that we're looking for. So I see in the chat, I know I said that I was going to answer questions at the end, but this kind of goes with this, which is, are dried blueberries good if fresh or not available? I would say yes. Dried fruits are going to still provide a lot of the nutrients. I think the only caveat with dried fruits for me that I always want to make sure people know is, if you do have diabetes or you're concerned with blood sugar, dried fruits are something that can really, they can skyrocket blood sugar, because, if I give you a cup of blueberries and we suck out all the water, there's just a tiny little bit of blueberries left. Same with grapes and raisins, prunes and plums. And so they're easy to overeat and your blood sugar can go through the roof. But if you don't have diabetes and you're not concerned about that, the dried berries are a great way to get them. So just a cup of fresh berries or a half a cup of cooked down berries, so like if you're making like a, oh gosh, I can't even think of the word. I'm thinking like compote, but I don't think that's the right word. But if you've cooked down some of your fruit, and then definitely same with, the frozen berry mixes are fantastic. Those are easily available, totally readily available at any of our grocery stores or at Costco or anything like that. Okay, next slide. Yes, so Ron, frozen blueberries on oatmeal is fantastic. Love that. Okay, so with protein, we are a blessed population here in Alaska where we have access to fish. And what we know is that eating fish, 3+ meals per week of fish that is high in omega-3s, which is salmon, is super, 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 super healthy. I just cannot stress it enough. There is not one medical condition in the world of nutrition where omega-3 fatty acids and where salmon pops in. Whether you're talking about heart health, brain health, whatever, omega-3 fatty acids are definitely a key. So salmon, the reason why we love salmon so much is because it is a fatty fish. So the fattier the fish, really all fat found in any type of fish is omega-3 fatty acid. And so you're just looking for a fattier fish. So that's why salmon is such a good source. Now, when I say 3+ meals per week, so a serving of salmon is considered 3 ounces, which is like the size of a deck of cards. So it's just about, this big. If you see my little, the picture there that has those little fillets, those are about 3-ounce portions. I would almost say it's like if you were to put a piece of fish on a bun, like a small hamburger bun to have like a fish sandwich, that's about 3 ounces. So a lot of times, it's easy to eat 4 to 6 ounces of fish if you're actually preparing it. So you might be getting a couple servings in one sitting. Now I talk about salmon, but don't forget, so even the white fishes like halibut and cod, they still have omega-3 fatty acids, just not as much as salmon does. So you just have to eat a little bit more. Tuna still has omega-3 fatty acids in it, just not as much as salmon does. So mix up your fish. If you hate salmon, there are lots of people that don't like it. That's okay. Eat other things. Eat sardines. Eat, eat cod. Eat pollock. Eat halibut. Eat whatever kind of fish that you can get your hands on is a great source and is going to be healthy for you regardless. And let's see, what else were we talking about the other day? I was talking to my husband about fish. Oh, like hooligan are amazingly high. For those of you that like smoked hooligan or something like that, excellent source of omega-3 fatty acid. Shellfish is not as high. But shellfish are great in the sense that There's literally almost no fat in shellfish. So shellfish is still an excellent protein source, but it's not going to be as high in omega-3 fatty acids as our other things. And then I think somebody also asked about smoked fish. Smoked fish does not get rid of the fatty acid, or, does not, I mean, some of that fat actually, when you smoke fish, you can see in your tray, there's, some fats and things that have been rendered out, so that's going to reduce the quantity. I think the biggest thing with smoked fish is just the salt. So if you have a condition, so I remember the disclaimer, some of you may have medical conditions that would really prohibit you from me wanting to have you eat smoked fish because of the salt content. So just, make sure that that you're okay there. And then let's see. Okay, next slide. I've got 5 minutes. Okay, healthy fats. So this is going to address Robin's question about whether or not frying foods ruins the omega-3s. So frying foods in lard or in coconut oil or in something that, or from like a fast food restaurant where they're using saturated fats to fry their food, it doesn't ruin the omega-3, but it's going to kind of probably cancel it all out in the sense that you're getting saturated fats. But then we can also, if you feel like frying something every once in a while and you can tolerate the mess, you can fry foods in healthy oils. And it's still, you get calories from it, but you still get the health benefit from it. So we have healthy fats. We have olive oil, canola oil, avocado oil, and then I would also throw peanut oil in there. I didn't have it on here. So if I'm sauteing something, if I'm drizzling oil on a salad, if I'm cooking up vegetables, olive oil is a great choice. Has wonderful monounsaturated fats, which are heart healthy fats. Canola oil, though, is also a great choice if you don't want that flavor that olive oil has, right? So you can put canola oil in, like I use that pretty much for everything that I don't want olive oil flavor. And canola oil has a higher smoke point. So if you are trying to fry something, you're going to be able to get the oil hot enough so it actually can fry your fish or whatever it is you're looking for. And same with peanut oil. Peanut oil has a very high smoke point. And that smoke point just being the point you've probably seen if you get your pan hot and you turn around and you're letting it heat up and then all of a sudden it's smoking away. That's because that oil has reached what it's called its smoke point. So if you're trying to cook food, we like to get, the oil as hot as possible. And there are ways to fry foods. You can pan fry foods with like panko and things like that you can get that crispy, crunchy, there are whole grain things out there that you can get that crispy, crunchy thing that you're looking for without deep fat frying. I did say coconut oil. Coconut oil is, I don't want to use the word bad, but any fat that is hard at room temperature is what we want to avoid. Those are the ones that are not good for our brain. Those are the ones that are not good for our hearts. So coconut oil is considered a tropical oil and it's loaded with saturated fat. If you have a jar of coconut oil at home, it's solid at room temperature. So that's what we really want to avoid. And somebody mentioned salmon's gray fat near the skin full of pollutants, really, so the how fish collect things like mercury and things like that, it sits in the fat. I will tell you that my personal belief is that I'm more concerned with fatty fish. It also has to be a long-lived fish. Salmon are not long-lived, but a long-lived fish like tuna and things like that, I'm more concerned about that with pregnant women or young people who have, kids who have 80 years in front of them if they're consuming lots of things that are giving them pollutants. But for me, I really think, this is my personal opinion, I think the health benefit of the salmon is way, way, way greater than any negative risk factor from the pollutants. Okay, next slide. I have 1 minute. Am I going to do it? Okay, so foods to avoid. Less than 5 servings per week of sweets and pastries. Okay, I did not say dessert. I didn't say cut out your ice cream, anything like that. Sweets and pastries specifically, a lot of times, especially if they're store-bought, can have a lot of trans fats in them. And that's the type of fat that's really not good for your brain, as well as a lot of saturated fat and added sugar. So the Mind diet encourages us to avoid, to just not have too much of those sweets and pastries types of things. Less than 4 servings per week of red meat. I even think that's still pretty generous. I really think that you should be less than, a lot less than 4 servings per week of red meats. Red meat primarily, for the purpose of this talk, I'm talking about, I'm going to answer your question, is talking about beef. Unless it's grass-fed, that's even better. That's a little bit better. Bison, buffalo, that kind of stuff is fine. But here in Alaska, I do not put moose, deer, caribou, any type of game meat in the red meat category, as far as when we're talking about nutrition. Yes, it's still red meat, but it is so lean and so high in iron and virtually has almost just such a small amount of saturated fat. That being said, if you take ground moose and you add a whole bunch of beef or pork fat to it, you've just added in, now you have put it back into that category of things like beef. If you are a beef lover, I grew up in Iowa. I love beef. I mean, beef, corn as a vegetable. Yeah. Bread on the table like a condiment. That's what I grew up on. Not the healthiest things. So if you love beef, I encourage you to twice a month, get the cut of beef that you really like, cook it, eat it with your family, have that social aspect, enjoy it, and then eat poultry, lean meats, fish on the other days of the week. Don't spend your money trying to buy a super lean ground beef. I would rather that you just had what you like less often. Less than 1 serving per week of cheese or fried food. So this cheese, I'm talking about like cheddar, something that has a high saturated fat content, but cheeses like feta, like string cheese, low-fat mozzarella, those would be good choices and would be okay. And then also trying to limit the amount of butter or margarine. And that's pretty obvious just because of it's a fat. It's that hard fat at room temperature. Okay, next slide. So putting it all together. So eat a variety of foods. The more colorful your plate is, probably the healthier and the better it is. I think we've always said for a long time, we've said, eat the rainbow. If your plate is boring and white and brown, you're going to be full. There's just probably not a whole lot of nutrients there. So try to make sure that your plate has a lot of color. Eat regular meals. That will encourage you and will give you the opportunity to incorporate all of these foods. If you skip meals and you only eat once a day, I can tell you that it is going to be very difficult to incorporate all of these food components. So if you don't eat very often, that might be what you start doing first to help your brain, to have a healthy brain. So adding a cup of blueberries once a day, if you're still only eating once a day, is not going to do it. So start off with making sure that you're getting regular meals, eat lots of fruits and vegetables. The more plant-based whole food, the better. And then definitely, can't stress it enough, eat your fish. It's here. And there are people that have freezers full of fish that are willing to get rid of their fish. At the senior center the other day, there was this gentleman, he's talking about how much he loves to fish. and he just has too much. So reach out to your neighbors, see if there are people that are, if they're fishing for recreation, and you have a freezer full of fish, but you're only living with either yourself or with one other person, share the wealth. There are probably lots of people that would love to take some salmon off your hands. All right, I think that's it. Is that it? Yep.
All right,
Amy,
well,
yeah, I
I'm
was
gonna,
gonna say, I've had a couple questions come in, Teresa, just to me, that maybe Amy can talk about. How does freezing or cooking change the benefits that we get from some of the foods that you've talked about? Came into me.
Okay.
And then also another one, is iceberg lettuce worthless aside from fiber? And then there's a couple more in there that I think you can see.
Okay, so the iceberg lettuce, the answer to that, I think, is yes, it is worthless other than fiber and water. It's actually pretty packed full of water. It has great crunch. So, I mean, I'm not ever going to discourage somebody from eating. You do get the fiber from it. It's just not going to have, as far as what we're talking about here today, it's not going to have the nutrients that the darker, leafier greens have. Now, for those of you that just love iceberg lettuce, or, the reality is that lettuce is, greens, they've gotten really expensive. And sometimes, sometimes I'll buy a head of iceberg lettuce and rip that up and mix it in with all of the other stuff to get the volume that I'm looking for. So it's not the best of the lettuces. The other question, what was the other question? The first one. Oops, you're muted, Linda.
Freezing and cooking. How does
thank
freezing
you.
and cooking affect the value we get from these foods?
Okay, so freezing actually preserves it. So in Alaska, there are studies that have shown that depending where you are in Alaska, that our fruits, many times frozen fruits and vegetables have more nutrients than our fresh. And the reason for that is because when you harvest the fruit or vegetable, they typically flash freeze it right there. And so it preserves everything. The environment and just being exposed, once it's kind of cut off from its nutrient supply in the soil, and we cut it, the environment can leach away some of those nutrients. And just by the fact that it can take a long time to get foods up to some of our communities in Alaska, I would almost encourage, if you're in a rural area, I would encourage you probably to have more frozen, have fresh to be because you enjoy it, but don't be afraid of frozen. Cooking does, the cooking process will leach a little bit of nutrients away, but not so much that to ever say, don't cook your vegetables. We still get plenty of health benefits from vegetables and fruits that are cooked. And so especially, not everybody can eat raw produce. And so put it in soups, cook it, it's perfectly fine. The more, the better.
What about freeze drying, Amy?
Freeze drying, really same thing. I think that, oh gosh, what kind of freeze-dried foods are you getting for produce? What are you thinking of? Whoever asked, or if you can type.
Yeah, and it's Robin, what were you asking? It says freeze drying and nutrition. Teresa, someone's already also asking if we can put the references, the last slide up, they had the references on it for a minute so that they can, maybe what I do usually when I see a slide, I take a picture of it with my camera, my phone, my iPhone, so that I can look later. But these will also be in the Zoom that you can look at later. It'll be made available later.
I'm not familiar with Thrive Life, so I would have to definitely do some research. I don't want to really speak to that too much.
I think the only, there were two other questions. One about low-fat products, dairy products like yogurt, and adding wheat germ to yogurt, if that makes up for the modern bread's lack of fiber, I guess, in wheat germ. And then also, how do nut oils compare with the other kinds of oils?
So I would say, so like peanut oil, if that's kind of like what you're thinking of, really any oil in general is going to be better than saturated fat. So we always, any kind of oil, even if you have, you know, just a mixed vegetable oil, is going to be better. The reason that you always hear about olive oil, avocado oil, is because they really are just much more, they're just higher in monounsaturated fats, but that doesn't mean the other oils are not as healthy. As far as low-fat dairy, I think low-fat dairy is great. You know, as long as you're choosing things that aren't loaded with sugar, you know, that's kind of the caveat there. But I love low-fat cottage cheese is a great source of protein. The Greek yogurts and things like that, if you like them, are great sources of protein. And yeah, anytime you can add any kind of grain or like wheat germ or anything like that into your food, I think that's, you know, that's great. So there's no, you know, there's no downside necessarily to that.
Thanks so much, Amy.
You're welcome.
And we're going to follow up with an email to everyone who registered for the webinar, and it'll include a link to the recording so you can go back and watch it again or share it with friends and family, and the PowerPoint. So you'll have access to all these resources. AARP has a lot of information and resources on brain health that you can look for online. Everyone can access the AARP website on brain health, aarp.org/brain health. And AARP partnered with the Global Council on Brain Health to gather information to share with you. They've created a report and a video for each of the 6 pillars of brain health that we're going to be looking at over the next 6 weeks. You can go to this website on the Global Council on Brain Health website for more scientific information if you want the scientific background for what we're talking about. Staying Sharp is a program which is free for AARP members. It offers a cognitive assessment that you can take every 90 days to measure change. And it also offers many resources, including brain games. So you might check out that Staying Sharp website. There are also articles, 4 articles that you might be interested in. And again, you'll get this slide in an email, but if you want to take a picture of it with your iPhone, your cell phone, that's how I do it. The 4 articles on the AARP website, and the links, like I say, will be provided in the follow-up email. I also wanted to mention that we're going to be doing a drawing for everyone who's registered for the Brain Health webinar, this 6-part series, and 2 people will be drawn to win Sanjay Gupta's book, Keep Sharp, Build a Better Brain at Any Age, and we'll have that drawing at the end of the webinar series. So that's a great, if you've read anything by Sanjay Gupta, he's a great writer and provides really good information. So I think that's worthwhile. That's really good. So other resources that are available for the diabetes prevention programs, participants must meet the following criteria. That's the diabetes prevention, kind of halfway down this slide. Participants must be 18 or older, overweight or obese with a BMI of greater than 25, and at high risk for developing type 2 diabetes or have been diagnosed with pre-diabetes. So those are criteria for that program, that diabetes prevention program.
So Linda, I'm just going to jump in here really quick.
Okay.
The diabetes prevention programs, it's a year-long how to eat better and exercise program. So if you are anywhere in any of those eligibility, I encourage you to connect with them. There's one at the YMCA of Alaska, but there's also several done by the state of Alaska at these various sites. There's also online versions and telephonic versions. And then there's a couple of resources here at the top that are just websites you can look at. And then the last one that I wanted to mention was the MyFitnessPal. It's an app for a smartphone, or you can download it onto your computer. It helps you track what you're eating. You can just scan the barcodes. You can put in recipes, and it tells you, how much you're eating. It tracks your weight. It can track. Also, you can also track your exercise all on that same app.
Terrific. Thanks, Teresa. We'll all be busy all afternoon using all of these, going to these different links and checking out things. So the best thing we can do is to start to make a change and start today. So I'd like you all to think of the things you learned today and pick one thing that you can start doing right away today, or if not today, tomorrow, but as we know what happens with tomorrow. So start today. Start small. It could be making a menu for the week with healthy choices, changing how or when you shop, joining a group that will support you to eat healthy, or change one thing in your diet. And then I want you to share that one thing in chat right now. Just write in chat, what's one thing that you think you could do today to make a good change? Another way to help you succeed is to write down the change that you want to make and get a little Post-it note, post it somewhere where you can be reminded. And it also helps to share it with family or friends so that they can help support you. So find someone who you can do this together with and support each other. I think that really is good too. Okay, I don't know if there are any last questions. We have 5 more brain webinars. This is the first. Next Friday, we'll be talking about exercise. And then February 10th, we'll be engaging our brains. On the 17th, we'll talk about being social. And February 24th, managing stress. And March 3rd, we'll talk about sleep. If you haven't signed up, you can sign up for the rest of the webinars in the Brain Health series. And you can find all of our events at www.aarp.org/AK. There it is on the screen. And so that's what you can log on there. Click on the story titled "Take Steps Toward a Healthier Brain." And that will take you to a website that has the links for all of the upcoming webinars. And if you haven't signed up for any of them, you can sign up for them all. And also, please share the website with anyone who you think might be interested in these webinars. So thank you for participating in each program. You should see a poll that's just popped up, and we hope you find we hope you've enjoyed and found this session helpful, and we hope you'll let us know how you like the program. And if you have any ideas for upcoming webinars, please add them to the chat, and we'll consider them for a future webinar. So please complete the survey and submit, and then in the chat, add any ideas. And thank you for joining us. Thank you, Amy, for a wonderful presentation and giving us all sorts of wonderful information that we can put to use. I love that kind of thing where we can really go out and use the information we learned. And we look forward to seeing all of you at our webinar next week on how exercise can keep your brain fit. So have a wonderful week, have a wonderful weekend, a wonderful week, and we'll see you next Friday.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, thanks, Amy. Yeah, this was terrific.
All right, we're going to stop recording.